Hey guys, so there's been a recent sort of demand for just the full steel version of the scalpels, and they come with this sort of friction sheath at the front. I don't have any of them on me here. Um, this is, the regular scalpel, the stainless V4 version, and that's like the full effort kind of the final product. But because of the demand in the full steel one, see, the thing is like the scalpels are constantly rising in price. They're getting more and more and more expensive for the end user, and that's you're paying for the wrapped handle, you're paying for all the handiwork involved with that. But it's very difficult for like a maker such as myself that's making all the knives myself to come up with a design or a product that is consistent, high quality, durable, etc. below, say like $80. It's very difficult when you consider that the distributors need a 30% margin. Then there's the VATs and all that. Then there's the production cost. The scalpel, the production costs, as they're getting more and more pricey, the production cost is also going up because we're putting more of that money into things like the surface grinding the bevels and into the steel, and to like bring the quality up as the price goes up. Now, of course, naturally, as an item grows in demand, the goal is to as it grows in demand, it grows in price, and the responsibility of the company is to continue bringing the quality of that product up along with the demand and the increase in price, because otherwise the consumer is just going to end up paying more for the same or more for less, because often what happens with a lot of manufacturers is the demand goes up and the manufacturing rates have to increase, and then the quality starts to go down. And that's, so then often what happens is people are paying more for less, and we don't want that to happen. So naturally, the only sort of path to take for somebody in my position who's making knives and selling them and trying to come up with a design that's like as affordable as possible is basically a full steel design. And I've never, I don't mind full steel designs. Like there's some knives like Picals that are just brilliant within a full steel construction because you're pulling with the Pical, you're pulling with it so that the spine is on your fingers. But like heavy duty sort of EDC knives, when they're full steel, they're quite narrow. They tend to sort of dig into your hand. They're not as comfortable. That's especially the case with bigger knives. Like if you have a very large knife with a really, really narrow handle, it wears you out a little bit quicker when you're doing heavy work with that. And it's very difficult to do like a full steel design where you're not like, how do you say this? I've avoided full steel designs because a wrapped handle or a handle just is that extra effort. But you're tripling the amount of work involved. You're doubling the amount of work involved in making that. And so, especially with the wrapped handle, which is significantly more difficult than a couple scales. And nowadays everybody does their scales on CNC routers. They just push a button and the program cuts out all the stuff from Micarta, and it's barely handmade anymore. So, it's completely different from like going through a huge box of moose antlers to find the perfect section on an antler, and then you have a massive chunk of this moose antler that you're going to cut through, flatten, grind away. If you go from absolute raw material to a handle, like from start to finish, you're talking hours and hours and hours of work. It's a whole day project to get a handle, like a really high quality handle from completely raw materials, and then you know the end product, what ends up costing 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 900 euros. Because it is a genuinely handmade product. You're paying for, you know 15 hours, 20 hours of work. And then when you include things like forging into that, and the heat treating, when that's the same thing applies with the steel, there is so much labor involved from start to finish, especially when you're talking about, even these rivet lock bullpups. These are forged all from round stock. It's, round stock, and you got to grind and polish and work everything through, like every single square millimeter of the entire blade is completely, worked over. So the only way you can really have like an affordable product, for everybody, so to speak, is to basically do stock removals, laser cut, plasma cut, water jet cut, blanks, outsource the heat treating, grind everything yourself, even outsource the grinding, and just come up with a really consistent, what are they called? There's a term for this in business. Minimum viable product. And I've tried to avoid full steel, and these have been selling very, very well because they're, 40, 50, 60 euros each, depending if it's the carbon steel or the stainless steel with or without a sheath. And people have no problem just wrapping a bunch of, this type of jute twine around the scalpel handles and, gluing it. And it's an excellent handle material, this jute twine. And the grip is incredible. But a lot of, this is something that anybody can do. I don't have to, it's a very low skill, very low effort type of handle. I mean, it takes a while because you're there wrapping the handles. On these particular handles, I got the hockey tape at the bottom, and I got a whole layer of nano cord, and then on top of that I put the jute twine. So you can see here clearly underneath, these are sort of the older versions that have the nano cord underneath. And you're there wrapping and wrapping and wrapping, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds over hundreds and hundreds of blades. I can do, sure, on average, like I'll do a better job than, the average person who's never done it before, of course, but the difficulty in just coiling hundreds of layers of string around a handle is not particularly difficult. So I've been avoiding full steel handles because it seems like low effort, and it is low effort. It's zero effort work. And from a artistry kind of perspective, full steel kind of feels like a cheap out. But at the same time, there are a lot of designs that are as effective, if not more effective, just being a full steel design. Now, one of the reasons in Finland or in the Nordics why you don't want like a full steel design is because if you're out in minus 20 degrees and that blade is hanging on your chest, it's a neck knife or it's hanging on the side of you or something, it's not in your pocket, that steel gets pretty cold and it gets sticky. It wants to stick to your hand. And it's not particularly, that steel cools down very, very quickly, and it'll be like minus 20 degrees in your hand. But with all this in mind, I'm sort of forced to come up with a full steel scalpel design. So that'll be like the same stainless steel and 2.5 millimeter thick. And all it is really just a continuation of the dimensions here at the front where the shoulders start. And we're going to have a small finger choil, of course, underneath to kind of guide where the edge starts. There's might be a rivet lock at the front because that is a very effective sheathing mechanism, like super effective. And the holes in the tang I plan on doing in both metric and in inch imperial, so that anyone in Europe who wants to put micarta scales or antler or whatever on there, they can do that, whether you live in the US or in England or Europe. I'm not sure yet. I think you guys are gonna have to tell me what your favorite pin dimensions are. I don't know if it's really that big a deal. I'm sure in the US there is, I mean, in one of my favorite dimensions for pins is around 4 millimeters. 5 millimeters is actually pretty chunky. That's better for larger blades. 4 is pretty good. 4 is pretty decent, and it's available, very available. It's just we don't have imperial dimension stuff easily available in Europe. So I can't, and I don't have experience with the imperial pins or drill bits and stuff like that. So I'd like to get it right the first time. But yeah, very simple design, full steel, essentially the same dimensions, full steel scalpel. I don't know how much the end price will be. I'm selling these at, yeah, like I said, depending on whether it has a sheath or not, where it's the carbon steel or stainless steel, anywhere between like 40 and 60 bucks. The shipping is not included. On the website, we've done it so that any purchase amount that is below $100 or euros, you add the shipping on top of. But I think, if you're gonna wrap, a basic wrap around that, or you're just gonna put scales on there, it's fine either way. I've had customers get the full steel version and then actually embed it in wood and have like a wood handle on there, and it looks very nice. So at the front, it depends how cheap I want to go, but a little hole at the front to fit in the kydex so it locks in, or rivet lock mechanism. But this is pretty much true to dimensions here. There isn't really much more to it than that. I probably won't necessarily polish the spines. It depends how much extra work that is, because every extra thing you do adds to the cost. And already grinding stainless steel is much more difficult than grinding carbon steel. Like carbon steel, it's a breeze to grind. It doesn't take any time at all. The stainless steel is much more abrasion resistant. It takes 20-30% longer to grind. But I also like the 2.5 millimeter thickness, even though it's more material to grind for the bevels. It does give us like a stiffer blade, which I think is extremely important with this design, because even with the wrapped handle, you see, you're going to have some flex. Well, there's very little flex in the 2.5 millimeter, but there's one here in 2 millimeter where it actually has quite a lot of flex, which is a good thing in some ways, because it means if you're prying something, you're not, those forces when you're prying are translating over the entire profile. They're spreading out. If you got solid scales, those forces end right here, and if you're prying, it's going to want to break off here. Pros and cons to everything. But actually, if I superimpose the two here, oops, you can see it's pretty much perfect fit. So they're essentially identical. And yeah, but so this full steel version is a must, and it'll be significantly cheaper to do, even that, significantly cheaper, like the sale price, than even the injection molded version of the handle that we're working on. So again, I've said in previous videos, the goal here is to kind of create as many versions of the scalpels as possible based on demand. And, these take a long time to make, a serious amount of expertise. There's 33 knots on each one of these handles, I have like 150 in a box there, and I made in total like 700 in the last year and a half or so. I mean, it depends if we include version 1 in there. That was a batch of maybe a couple hundred. I had to look at all the archived stories and the posts and the dates on them, but it's a good several kilometers of paracord that's been turned into knots. It's an enormous amount of work, and it's just basically the luxury model of the scalpel. And I don't see, even though it's still pretty narrow, the handle is, it's still relatively small. I don't see it being all that big a difference whether it's full steel or not. I mean, I still have a grip on here. This one has like a really warped tang. I can still use this for carving. I've carved wood with the full steel ones, and I haven't necessarily felt all that big of a difference. So why not do a full steel one? I'll be able to make 10 times more full steel ones than the wrapped ones. I mean, with the wrapping on these, it's hard to do more than 6 a day. Like if I just sit down and cram, after you do one handle, you're numb, your fingers are pretty numb, and you got to apply an enormous amount of force. After you do 4 or 5, you're sweating, your heartbeat is up. You need a break between each one. I can do maybe 2 or 3. 3 is pretty extreme in a row with no breaks, but after that I need a coffee break, because that's 2 hours there sitting wrapping each knot as perfectly as possible. Like each knot has to be perfect, but if the reality of the situation is, when you look on Instagram and you look at guys who do custom knives that have wrapped handles like this, very similar to this design, slightly larger actually. I don't know if you can see my butt crack. So, a knife like this one on Instagram with a wrapped handle, they're, $300-400 knives. It's a huge amount of work. And this one's a really nice one. This one's been called for. So, why not just bite the bullet and whatever, just make some full steel knives. I mean, the original concept for all the rivet lock smalls is that they were full steel. So why not go and produce a full steel stainless scalpel? At the end of the day, it makes a lot of sense too, because the scalpel is supposed to be highly concealable, very, very light, very minimalist. It's like the last fallback knife. It's around your neck or in your pocket. You just pull it out and cut whatever you need. You need to open some boxes, carve a little wood. You left your Bowie somewhere. You left your camp knife over there. Whatever. It's for me. This scalpel is the only knife I carry and use with me everywhere I go. I don't have any particular I don't have any particular need for any other knife. This does everything I need it to do. We've skinned moose with it. You know, a moose is the size of a fucking cow. Deer. These are heavily used for skinning small game. So, just a brilliant design. It's you know, it's perfect to me. I mean, I really don't need anything else. So, you know, why not work more on that design? And then there's, of course, the legal aspects. In many countries, this is where they have strict knife carry laws. This is entirely legal to carry with you, because there's no restrictions on the handle length. There's only restrictions on the blade length. And the stainless steel model is about 6 centimeters long, the blade. So, you know, if you hold it like this, it's still a pretty effective little poker. If you're grappling, I've had a few guys, these MMA guys that have like 70, 80,000 followers on Instagram, ask me for custom little scalpels that have even shorter blades for their, you know, grappling and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. The full steel handle, you know, it's it might be more slippery, might not be as ideal for grappling and martial arts, but it's still an option. And the nice thing with being able to have a scalpel option that has a rivet lock or some kind of locking mechanism for the sheath at the front like that is that you have a lot less kydex material. See here, because it doesn't have a rivet lock, it depends on the wrapping to fit in the sheath. When you look at a rivet lock book small, it just clicks right in like that. Very streamlined, very minimalist. Now, of course, if you have a rivet lock, you have to have a sandwich sheath like this. That's a must. When you don't have a rivet lock, then you can do a taco sheath. And the taco sheaths are, you know, like, no joke, like 100 times faster to make. The taco sheath is like the fastest and easiest way to make kydex sheaths. Granted, if you're not careful, they can split down the spine. It just depends a lot on a few factors. So you don't get that with the sandwich sheath. This is like the longest lasting type of kydex you can have. But all in all, that's, you know, that's really all I have for you guys today. This is just a heads up. It's probably going to take a few months before I get the ball rolling on this, but I think it's necessary. It would be really, really nice, of course, to be able to sell some kind of scalpel design, you know, that's relatively handmade. I have to grind these all myself, polish them all myself, do all the sheaths myself. It'd be nice to have like a nice product like this for, you know, like $50 each. I mean, that would be extraordinary, like a super affordable, you know, blade. And you know, the difference between, you know, and then if you want to, you know, wrap some cord around it, or you want to put some scales on it, it's totally doable. I mean, I'll put some scales on some of them. I've been digging the white micarta a lot. You know, with some liners. I think that'll be really, really cool. So I think, you know, in hindsight, my my resistance to doing full steel knife constructions has kind of bit me in the ass a little bit. I mean, I understand if manufacturers like Booker do full steel blades, you know, but at the same time, it's not that big a deal. I think It's more like when knives are like this big and bigger, that the full steel aspect kind of starts to crumble, especially if they're very, very thin. But, you know, this full steel scalpel, this particular one, I should have done that a year and a half ago. But I've been very hesitant to do full steel designs. But at the same time, there's no reason to be hesitant on doing the full steel designs. It's, you know, why not? And then it gives, you know, the options for people to do their own handles. And often people prefer to do their own handles because they trust their own handle making process themselves more. A lot of people, they just, you know, they have a style of doing handles. They want to personalize the item. They want to do it themselves. They have creative ideas. So why not do it yourself? No reason not to. And I think this would actually solve a lot of issues. It would open up an entire bracket of customers that I used to appeal to. And yeah, so I'll see you guys later.